I've been putting off this vlog intro for way too long, but here we go. It's time for you to guess my reading taste. Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My name is Brianna and this is For Pause in a Book. I make bookish videos over here on my little corner of the internet, so if that's something that you're interested in, make sure that you hit the subscribe button down below. I've been scouring the bookternet for the past 6 weeks or so, trying to find the best books. And today, these 10 booktubers are going to choose the books that I'm going to be using for this video, and we're going to try to find a new favorite book. So back in October, I did this choose your own adventure series with some spooky books, and I thought, why not do it again? So today we're going to go on a little journey. I have 5 genres that I think I read primarily from, and so I picked 2 booktubers from each of those genres, or who read primarily those genres, are known for those genres, and they're gonna battle it out a little bit. So there are 10 books in this video, and there's going to be a little bit of a maze to get to the end. So in the video that you've clicked on today, I'm going to read 50% of the 2 romance books that I've chosen for this vlog. At the 50% mark, you will decide which book you think I'm going to like more, and that will take you to the next video. If you chose the right book, it's going to lead you on to the next set of books, which will be the thriller genre, and you will pick which one you think I'm going to like better of that one, and so on and so forth. We're going to do romance, thriller, fantasy romance, horror, and fantasy. So before we get into the vlog portion of the video, let's talk about all 10 books and the booktubers that chose them. For the romance books, I picked 2 booktubers that are very well known for reading a lot of different types of romances. And I did pick 2 that were already on my shelves. Like, these weren't necessarily their favorite 2 books, but they were, I tried to stick to the books that I already own, because, you know, that's a physical goal of mine. Book number 1 is going to be coming from Chandler Ainsley, and that book is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This was actually on a lot of people's best books of the year. This book is about a woman who inherits an apartment from her aunt. She was very close with her aunt, and there's 2 rules to this apartment. Take your shoes off when you walk in the door, and don't fall in love in the apartment. And that seems like a weird rule, right? Except that the apartment has a little bit of a time slip, so she walks into the apartment and there's a man there from 7 years ago. And you can kind of infer from the rules and then that premise what's gonna happen. I read The Dead Romantics from Ashley Poston and really enjoyed the little bit of a speculative twist to contemporary romance, so I have high hopes for this one. And then the other romance book came from Izzy over at Happy for Now. Izzy is someone that I met this summer, and I actually get to meet her in person next summer, which is so cool. But her favorite book, which again, well, a lot of people had this book on there, and that is Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. This is a second chance romance about a wedding planner and a grumpy florist. And they have to plan a wedding together or design a wedding together. And obviously there's gonna be, like, you know, sparks are gonna fly. Second chance romance, that kind of fun, you know, fun things like that. Second chance romance is not always my favorite trope in romance books, but I've just heard nothing but good things about this book, so I have high hopes for it. So I'm going to be reading 50% of these 2 books in this video. Then you'll move on to the thriller genre, and there are 2 books there. The first one is going to come from Deja over at Deja's Book World, and that is All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby. I remember Razorblade Tears, is that the book? Yes, Razorblade Tears getting a ton of hype, and that was his book from the previous year, and this book again is getting a ton of hype. It's a crime fiction or crime thriller about a man who used to work for the FBI and is now the town's first black sheriff, and there is a murder, serial killer, I believe, possibly. And knowing S.A. Cosby, there's going to be a lot of commentary on race and the police and how the police treat black people. Very excited about this one, have heard a ton of great things about it. And then from Gabby over at Gabby Reads, we have The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. This book has had very mixed reviews. I saw this book on people's best of the year and also worst of the year, so I don't know what we're getting into with this one. But this book is about a group of young writers who get asked to go to this, like, secluded camp where they will be writing their newest novel. They're going to get inspiration. And this woman has had a little bit of a writing slump for the past couple of years, ever since her friend and her had a big falling out. Her friend is also going to be there, and it's probably going to be a lot of drama. So we'll see what happens. From the thrillers, we're going to switch gears completely and go into fantasy romance. I had to try to split everything up. So fantasy romance is next. From Mel over at Melnor Reads, we're going to be reading The Foxglove King by Hannah Whitten. I've had this one on my shelf since release day because honestly the cover is gorgeous. But I had heard some very like mediocre things about it, which is why it was still sitting on my shelf instead of getting read very quickly. Mel and I don't always have the same taste when it comes to fantasy and also fantasy romance, although I haven't really read a lot of the books that she has read in fantasy romance. So we'll see what happens. This book has a lot of like, it's obviously royalty, it's got courtroom politics, backstabbing. Those are like some of my favorite things in fantasy romance or fantasy in general. So I feel like in fantasy romance it will also translate. We'll see. And then Grace from G Swizzle, one of her favorite books was A Ruin of Roses. I don't remember the author's name, so I don't have it physically. It's a Kindle Unlimited book. But this came onto my radar because G's best book of the year was Daughter of No Worlds and the War of Lost Hearts trilogy, and that made my favorite fantasy romance books of the year. So I'm hoping that that will translate. Like this A Ruin of Roses was book number 2, so I'm kind of hoping that that will translate. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but with like fae and shifters, and I think that's gonna be a really interesting, unique premise. Switching gears again, we are going to horror after that, and these two people I feel like are the first two people you think of when you think of horror. So the first one is Kayla over at Books and Lala, and for this I will be reading Monstrilio, and this is another book that I'm getting electronically because I cannot find a physical book for this. And there were actually 2 horrors on her list of top 10 books that I hadn't read and I was really interested in, but the more she talked throughout her like year-end content, the more it was very clear that this book was her favorite horror and was the one that she recommends the most. This is kind of a grief horror about a woman who loses her child, and then instead of taking like a lock of hair from the child, as you know, after passing, she takes his lung out, which is a weird choice. But anyways, the lung starts growing and becomes a living thing, and so that's gonna be weird and gross, and here for that. And then also weird and gross, from Jan over at Jan Agaton, her favorite horror book and her like number 2 book overall was Mayfly by CJ Lead. And like this cover just screams gross. And this is, I think, an extreme horror about a woman who is like a Disney princess, but then also maybe a serial killer or something worse. I'm not really sure. I've heard very mixed things about this book, and honestly, I don't think I've ever read an extreme horror before. We are in for a ride with this one, but we'll see what happens. And then finally, the last battle will be fantasy, and we're choosing 2 heavy hitters here. The first one is Cassidy from Covers with Cassidy, and for her book I will be reading Along the Razor's Edge by Rob J. Hayes. This book is one that she has like praised all year long. It made one of, I think it was like maybe number 3 on her best books of the year, but I had already read number 1 and 2. And Cassidy and I have very similar taste when it comes to some things and very different taste when it comes to others. I actually have an entire video where I did test out Cassidy's reading taste last year, so go ahead and check that out if you want to. But this book is about a girl who has been stripped of her magic, and she has been like, she's basically a slave in the pit, and they have to dig and they have to mine, and it is, you know, not a good time. And she has to escape, and that's basically the whole point of this book. It's actually a completed like 5-book series, so I'm only reading 1 in this video. I've heard like nothing but good things about this book, so I'm very hopeful. And then going up against her is going to be Murphy over at Murphy Napier. For that I will be reading Blood Over Bright Haven by M.L. Wong. This is kind of dark academia but with fantasy and like stabby characters, which I think is probably the type of dark academia that I will enjoy more than like the contemporary style of dark academia. This is about a woman who her main goal in life is to get into this academy, or to be admitted into the high magistry. She does that, but it's very well known that she is not welcome there. Everyone is making her life as difficult as physically possible. She finds this ancient secret that will basically just blow everything up. It does say could change the course of magic forever, and like that's high stakes. mistakes, right? So this is one I had actually never heard of prior to Murphy talking about it on her best books of the year. This is the same author who wrote The Sword of Kaigan, which I have heard of, I just haven't read it yet. But when Murphy started talking about this one, I was like, sold. I sold immediately. I purchased this book. So this is one that wasn't originally on my physical TBR, but it was one that I definitely knew I would be reading regardless of this project. All right, that's enough chit chat. Let's get into the vlog portion of this video where we will be reading the first 50% of the 2 romance books. Good luck. Okay, I'm starting my first book for this project. We're starting Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. I am worried about this book. This book has so much hype and I'm a little bit scared about it. First off, it's Reylo fanfic. The last Reylo fanfic contemporary romance that I read was The Love Hypothesis. And as we know, that didn't go well for me. I have a vlog. You can watch it. The other thing is it's like second chance romance, and that's like my least favorite trope in contemporary romance. So this has a lot of things going against it, but I have hope because like this was on so many people's best of the year, and a lot of them I have a very similar taste to, and so we're going to trust Izzy, we're going to trust everyone else, and we're gonna read it. So I haven't started it yet. It does have some things that I love, mainly a wedding, because this is a wedding planner and her grumpy ex must work together to plan a celebrity event, and so he's like the florist, I think, and she's the wedding planner, and I love a behind the scenes wedding planner type thing. Like back in the day I thought I wanted to be a wedding planner. Still probably would rock it, but regardless. So like it has some of those buzzwords, but I'm just worried about it being a second chance romance, which is not generally my favorite, and also like it being called Reylo fanfic. So we'll see. The defining moment will be why they broke up in the first place and how far apart that space is, and like what did one person or the other do in order to break up in the first place. Because a lot of times if somebody did something just absolutely egregious and like they don't have any redeeming like factors, or the relationship shouldn't be, like, we shouldn't continue this relationship, there's no reason that these two people should be together, and the author, it feels like it's forcing the person or the people together, that's when there's a problem, and that's when I can't get on board with a second chance romance. So it'll really depend on what they did to break up or why they broke up in the first place. That's gonna really determine it, and like what they're doing to work through that. So let's start this book. Did I just move my tripod to the other side of the desk so it looked like I've been reading? Or that I have moved? Yes, I have moved quite a bit. I had to go to the dentist today. But I wanted to update you and tell you about Forget Me Not. I am 23% of the way in, which is 77 pages. So still have quite a ways to go. And we haven't figured out why they broke up in the first place. Just that they have been avoiding each other. Like she was using other florists in her business as the wedding planner. But they have to work on this event together, and so she's having to like go back into his life. And they're showing some flashback scenes when they first met. I think it was like 2 years ago or something like that. 3 years, 8 months, 2 weeks, and 1 day ago. I don't know any motivations though so far, so that's kind of frustrating me, and I just kind of want to know like why they didn't what happened. What happened between the two of them? That's what I need to know right now. But yeah, I'm really liking all of the behind the scenes stuff. I'm really liking the, like just the technical side of planning a wedding, especially one to this extreme. But I don't know why like we're calling this Reylo fanfic, because other than him being a little bit grumpy, I don't see this as a Reylo, right? Like he's taken over his father's florist business. His father was like crazy about flowers and how flowers have this meaning, but like why do we call everything Reylo fanfic? I don't understand this. I don't know. I don't really read fanfic. Actually, like literally having this conversation on sprints right now. I don't read a lot of fanfic, so I don't know the ins and outs of it. And I know that she like her author bio on the back of this book says she's a musical theater geek, a fandom nerd, and the author of many spicy fan fictions. Great, I love that you're getting your start there. But can't we just call this its own thing that like has similar tropes to the Reylo romance? Those are just my thoughts so far. So there's nothing wrong with the book yet. It's just the marketing of the book. But I am going to continue reading this. I'll probably check back with you tomorrow once I hit that 50% mark, if not before. Okay, the light sucks here, but it's 7 o'clock in the morning and it's dark and I need to go to work. But I wanted to touch base with you. I am 35% of the way into this now. Okay, here's the thing. I'm really, really liking this book. However, I am so afraid it's gonna break my heart because we still don't know what happened. We're starting to get these little, hints that, like, she broke his heart, or like, there was a big falling out. They were together for a year, and it's like, I just need to know what happened. And it's like this like analogy of like when you're like stepping out onto ice, like a pond that's frozen, but then you're trying to be very careful and you're like gingerly stepping on it because if you put too much pressure on it, it's gonna crack. The whole thing's gonna crack. That's the analogy in my head. Maybe it's just too early in the morning and I haven't had enough coffee, but that's what I'm thinking as I'm driving to work this morning. And then the other thing is that I don't see this as Raylo. I can't, I don't see the connections here. What I do see the connections is Luke and Lorelai, because he is this grumpy man. I'm seeing him wearing flannel, and like there's this one flashback scene where she's like taking Instagram pictures and she's like, and I'm like, the chaos of that scene felt so much like Lorelai, and I was here for it. That was good. It was just a funny scene. And then the other thought I had was, why in said Raylo fanfics is the woman always just like her sole personality trait is eating sweet things? I don't understand that as like it's the only time I've ever heard of it is Allie Hazelwood and now this book. I don't know why those two specifically, like Allie Hazelwood, it's like, the Frappuccinos, and this one it's donuts. I don't understand, but it's like literally 3,000 times she's eating a donut, and like, it's not important. It's not important. I wanted to touch base with you because it'll probably be the last time that I talk to you before I hit 50% since I'm about to go to work. But yeah, okay, anyways. Hi, we're back in the car. I'm at 50%. I stopped the book in the middle of a chapter because that was 50%, and my God. I mean, it was in the middle of a smut scene too. I mean, like, we got past the smut scene, but it was still like in the same chapter. Here's the thing. This book is so technically well written because all of the points of view from Elliot, our male main character, all of his POVs are like from the past, and it just feels like the entire time he's still pining for her. He's still thinking about those times, and they like mentioned that like she broke his heart, and it's so angsty. I want to say I'm loving the book, but I might like be cheating. I don't really know. But like, I'm having such a good time with this, but I still don't know what happened. I still don't know what happened. And I think, and that's the thing with romance books specifically, romances and thrillers, I feel like have like the biggest chance of, if the third act is done poorly, the whole book goes like way down. And so there's a risk, but I'm going to start reading The 7-Year Slip, and we're going to get to 50% of that, and then you can decide which one I'm going to like better. May the odds be ever in your favor, because I don't even know at this point. Another early morning, another car update. I am about 20% into The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. And this is the second romance book that I've read from Ashley. She wrote The Dead Romantics, which I really enjoyed. And I like this real like interesting twist on a contemporary romance where there's like a little bit of a speculative element. It's not like fantasy, but there's just this like one twist from reality. Like in The Dead Romantics, it was like, no, she could see ghosts. And in this one, it's that the apartment that she's staying at kind of like slips into another time. And so there's this other person that's in the apartment from 7 years ago that she can interact with. And I just think that that's really like an interesting twist. Like there's so many contemporary romances on the market now, and it's hard to do something that's unique. And Ashley's kind of cornering that market at this point. So like I said, I'm about 20% in. This is a really interesting competition between the two of these, because Forget Me Not is so like funny and humorous and just like, you know, light. This one is dealing with a woman who has lost her aunt who she was very close to. She traveled all over like the globe with her, and now she's like staying in her aunt's apartment. Like she inherited it, and that's kind of the reason why she's like letting this other person stay in the apartment from 7 years ago. Because like in her mind she's like, he's living in a time that my aunt is still alive, and so she's dealing with some of this like grief and loss and nostalgia, and it's really, really well done. And then I'm in this chapter right now where they're talking about food, because he wants to be a chef, and so he's talking about like this, the passion of cooking and the passion of food, and how the perfect meal, it doesn't have to be from a Michelin star restaurant. It can be like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's just like the connection and the emotion that's attached to those meals. And I've always said that about food, and so that's like just kind of a I don't know, it kind of hit me in the feels a little bit, because food is so much more than just the stuff on a plate. Like, yeah, sure, going to a fancy restaurant is so cool and like an experience like no other, but like I keep thinking of like, okay, for example, in March, I get to go to Hell's Kitchen in Las Vegas, which is like a dream of mine, right? Like Gordon Ramsay's Hell's Kitchen. But like I'm going with my husband, and that's the experience that I want. Like I want to see the look on his face as he eats that. It's the experience around the food that I'm excited about, not necessarily the food. I'm excited about the food too, but like, you know what I mean? Like I'm excited to experience the food with the person that I love. So anyways, that was, long story short, tangent. As a book, I mean, I'm still very early on, but I do love the main character. She's very relatable. She's very much me, to the point where her favorite color is this like golden yellow, and that's one of my favorite colors. So there's that. But anyway, there's also like she got a sentence of like, I just like having things planned, and I like being organized, and I like knowing what's coming next. And I'm like, girl, a mood. I am gonna read more of this today because I'm reading it at work. I don't know how much I will be able to like catch up with you as I'm reading it. We'll see. I might have to like come back out to my car at some point in the morning and give you guys an update, so you have more than one update before the 50% mark, because you know, you've got a decision to make. And honestly, I don't even know at this point. I stopped reading Forget Me Not. Like I know that there's like a lot of like movie magic to vlogging and editing, and we're doing things out of order. This one I'm not. This one I am reading to 50% of both of them. So I will be just as confused and mystified as you are. So it's about 3 hours later. I'm a little over 40% of the way, so this will be my last update before the 50% mark. But here's one thing I can say about these books. Both of them. I've read so many romance books in my career on BookTube. So many. And one of the things that like, you know, you see a lot in romance is that they, like, the plot is fine, and they tend to be really formulaic, which is fine. It's supposed to be. Both of these books are just like twisting the perspective just a little bit on a typical romance trope, and it's so well done. These are technically so well written, and like I'm having a great time. I'm so glad that these are the first two romance books that I've read of the year, right? Like regardless of if they're 5-star books or not, the quality in the writing is just top notch, god tier, and so like for that I'm very thankful for it, because like I said, I've read a lot of bad romance. So just wanted to come in and say that. I don't have any other real thoughts. It is interesting, like I have to kind of think about it as I'm listening to this book, and I kind of think of like, okay, how, like I always like try to think ahead, especially with romance, because like you can kind of see the formula sometimes, but I'm finding that I can't with this one, because I do have to kind of suspend my disbelief a little bit, because there is that like paranormal aspect of like, she spent an entire weekend in her apartment, not leaving her apartment, and so she was 7 years in the past, and then like, but if she steps out of the apartment, then she is back to present day, right? And so like, I'm like, how does that work? Like, could she walk out of her apartment and then Google the man? And then like, what happens when she finds him in the present day? Is he gonna remember her? Like, what time travel, right? Time travel is always really weird, but I'm just kind of like, I've decided I'm just gonna be along for the ride, because I don't know where she's going with this book. So I'll come back at 50% and then you can decide which one you think I'm gonna like better. I don't know. Hello, it's later in the day. I am 50% of the way through the 7-year slip. I've come to the conclusion that this whole video is just gonna be in my car. But I read the first half of these 2 books in like 2 days and they were all at work. So that is what it is. I am going to go to the gym now, but I did hit 50% of the way through here, and something just was revealed, and like I can totally see how that happened. Like, I can see the roadmap, but I am so perplexed now. I am so perplexed, and I will be continuing this on when I'm at the gym. So I will come back to you in like an hour and a half or so, and I will tell you more about this book. But this is where I end this vlog here and now. You have to decide, and good luck. Good luck. Because at this point, I don't even know. So like, good luck to you. If you think I'm gonna like Forget Me Not by Julie Soto, click on this video here. And if you think I'm going to like the 7-year slip more, click this video here. Have fun, and may the odds be ever in your favor.